There's much I wish to say to my mother's family sometimes. Far too much. When I think about how much I have to say, I feel as if I could feel a library with individual tones written about each individual person, about how their lives started, what happened, and what went wrong and what went right. I could write it perfectly. And because I could write it perfectly, I could also write it better. I have been around you all too long, and what you never understood is that I am always studying. And you don't understand how boring y'all were to study. Like, I could write the story before I was even out of grade school. I saw the totality of a life. And the painful thing is that I knew where the story was going. I used to have to write it a better way. I would say to myself, well, you guys might hate me, but at least you love every other child, right? At least you love them. But I was mistaken because what I didn't know was that you had just enough hatred in you for everybody. Everybody who isn't yourself. And that's the problem. I see it clearly. I don't even need the crystal ball. What I see is not the future, but the past, staring back at me with empty eye sockets. The past, always talking, ghosts whispering in your ear about all the horrible things that have happened. The past. And you know what's funny, considering you all believe in God? You don't know how many people are happy to give him a reason to keep you out of hell. What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of hate in the past. And that hatred eventually catches up to the future. That's what I saw in all of your stories. Hatred handed down to you by your parents, who was handed down to them by their parents, by the society they lived in the past, by the people around them. A lot of stories going back to time I have to invent to fully understand how we got from the primal era to where we were now. It's a bit of a silly thought because life doesn't take that much to go on. Life is mostly accidental. And at the best of times, people are lying to themselves about it. I watched it. But it feels like I watched it. It feels like I've been standing in the sun, in tall grass for a long time, watching, looking, trying to understand what went right and what went wrong. But I wasted a lot of time doing that. I wasted a lot of time trying to understand how to correct this story, only to realize that the ones controlling the story are the characters. There's so much I could say to you all, but the reason I don't say it was never to spare your feelings, but because I knew you wouldn't understand. And I knew that a long time ago. You guys do a thing that Rihanna also did, because of course she did. She was one of you. But she would often do this thing where it's like, if she could do something that I couldn't do, she would hold that thing above her head until I was able to do it. Then she would have forgotten why she loved that thing in the first place. I had to limit what I could say to you all because you could only think to love something to get something over me. And it's like, that's not love. That is the furthest thing from it. But you think it is, somehow. So that thought, that whole thing of at least you love all the other kids, I would come to find out that you don't really know what love is. And that is what's going to be your undoing. Life goes on happenstancely, by chancely, never truly ever on purpose. Things persist because persisting is an easy thing to do. And propagation only takes one simple act after that. It's such a simple thing that a virus can do it. And the only thing that could really take a virus out is outpacing its endurance. Seeing where something is going to go and stopping it at that point. That is terrifying. Horrifying. And when the past hangs on too long, that's all you see in the future. You know where the story is going. So you're standing there waiting. Well, there's a bit of madness. Here I am, staring at a skull, thinking I can challenge death. What would I do? How would I do that? I can figure this out. I will. But that's a bit of madness for another time. Still, hold on. Let me ponder this for a bit. I see light in the darkness, of course, a spark. Because despite how solid it seems, there's always imperfections in the barrier. The key is just taking that spark and igniting it a bit more. Is that escape? Or is this just how it always is? The dance of life and death. It's hard. But again, that's madness for another time. For this time, I just think, man, I wish you all weren't so good at showing me what death is. With showing me the era of mistaking love is. There's so much I want to say. And one of the main things is you guys were just bad at it, frankly. And you should have just gotten rid of me sooner. In the legal way, not the abandonment way, not the kill them way, the legal way. But no, that would be a bit too embarrassing, right? We have to do it the underhanded way. And that's sort of what it always was. But you always were on two different roads. Like, you could see that I saw the future, but you couldn't see the future that I saw. So you thought that if you just had a reason to latch on, like a lamprey, you would be able to drink from the fruit of the future too. It's like, this is why you guys don't. Y'all aren't ready. Not for me. Like I said before, you should have just abandoned me. But y'all aren't ready for the God you believe in. I picked up your Bible. I didn't read it from start to finish, but God, who has time for that? But I picked up those stories, and it's like, oh, y'all are willingly missing the point at this point, huh? Is it just that someone taught you the wrong lesson and you refuse to learn the right answer? Or is it that you're afraid of admitting what the right answer is? How do I explain this to you guys? I can't. No, this is just a lamentation at this point. And yeah, that's all it can be. What a shame. You wanted that future without ever having to reckon with the past. You wanted it to be that you could forget the wrongs you've done. Instead of stop in the moment, think about them, and ask yourself if you could change. And if you can't, the answer isn't to pretend like you can, it is to accept that you can't. And if you want to learn, you'll learn. I don't know is a valid answer. And in my life, I said I don't know to you all a lot. Not because I didn't know, but because I knew I'd never be able to explain to you how I got to that point. You lose track so easily along the way. And I don't follow a linear path. I skip from place to place, spatially, conceptually. You you don't understand. You can't. You're frozen in the past, and the future is limitless. Limitless. You don't understand. And I can't make you understand. You all are too afraid. You're afraid of me being right, but me being right is the only way forward. And since you're afraid of me being right, you obsess over how I could be wrong. You want to rewrite the past to make your wrongs right, and you can't. All you can do is reckon with who you are and why you did what you did. You could reckon with and say, in that moment, because it's never too late, you would say, in that moment, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be better. I'm going to try. And I'm not going to run away from who I am, who I was. No, I'm going to look back on that moment and say, damn, I might have been there a long time ago, but look where I am now. I might have made mistakes a long time ago, but I have learned from them. I have learned so I can teach better in the future. I can reach the future instead of the past. I could look away from the cold, empty eyes of death toward something radiant, something you can't even begin to imagine. But you need me to be wrong. Because otherwise, you've made a grave mistake. And the grave is a mistake. The truest mistake is never admitting that you're wrong. It grows closer to you. You can't outpace it. It is the mistake it seizes upon again and again. It's frightening. But in being able to look back, in being able to say, I was wrong, but I'm doing better, you're able to keep going. You're like, you know what? I fucked up, but I know better now. I know better because the lesson was taught. And if it wasn't taught, at least I survived it. You can keep going, but you can't when you have people around you who are afraid of reckoning with the past. They're afraid of what it says about them. And it could be what it used to say about them, but instead, it's what it says about them now. Because they haven't changed. And when they don't change, they don't learn how to move better. They don't learn how to follow a thought. You guys are still too young. And of course you are, because all your lessons were taught by young people. Were taught by people who weren't ready for the real world. You were taught by people who needed the world to look a certain way because it was the first way they learned to look at the world. They stopped learning so long ago that every new generation is young because it takes a lot to learn from the past. And it's painful to look back and see how hurtful everyone was, how everyone tried to escape into this bunker of identity, in grouping and out grouping, and always saying that as long as the in group is alive, that's all that matters. God's above. Ugh. I cannot be your teacher. And no more than you could be mine. Which was one of the biggest problems, wasn't it? Because if you taught me, then those things you knew that you could hold on to would always be of value. If you taught me, you wouldn't have that bit of information you had anymore, that bit of ability to remain superior. And at that point, what's the point of loving it? The absolute dimensions I have traveled through this lament. So many spaces. You don't understand how open the world is. And it's too late for me to teach you. You have to find someone else. You all are so stuck in the past that this is who you'll always be. And who I'll always be? Well, there's the funny thing about that. A whole nature versus nurture type of thing. And it goes back to what I said at the start of this lament. I know how to write the story better. So I will. And here's the thing about me. While y'all are busy fighting your siblings, your nieces, your nephews, your grandchildren, I've been fighting death. I have been fighting death since the night I watched my mother die. And that's what y'all never understood. You thought it broke me. No. It woke me up. And now, well, I see the end of stories in you, but the beginning of new ones in me. I'm going to tell those stories and, well, see where this goes. And if death does manage to catch up with me, it's all right. I'll admit I was wrong, and then take a shot at it again. Yes. Y'all do not understand. But that's all right. I never presumed to be someone who is easy to understand.